There's something oddly fascinating about the most ordinary parts of the human body. We notice them every day, but rarely stop to ask why they exist in the first place. Take a look at your stomach for a second. Right there in the center is a small mark, a dent or bump that's been with you your entire life. It doesn't seem to do much, it doesn't move, and it doesn't exactly help you lift, think, or breathe. And yet, every single person has one. So naturally, the question comes up, what are belly buttons actually for? Why do we have them at all? And do they still serve any purpose after we're born? That's exactly what we're diving into today, right here on History of Simple Things. To understand the belly button, you have to go back to a time before you were even born, when you were still developing inside the womb. Back then, your belly button wasn't just a mark, it was the center of a lifeline. During pregnancy, a structure called the umbilical cord connects a developing baby to the placenta, an organ that forms inside the mother's uterus. This cord is essentially a biological supply line. Through it, oxygen and nutrients travel from the mother's bloodstream into the baby's body. At the same time, waste products from the baby are carried back through the cord to be processed and removed by the mother's body. In other words, before birth, you weren't breathing air, eating food, or drinking water the way you do now. Everything you needed to survive came through that single connection. The umbilical cord was your entire support system, and the point where it attached to your body eventually became your belly button. The moment a baby is born, everything changes. The baby takes its first breath, the lungs expand, and the body begins to function independently. At that point, the umbilical cord is no longer needed. Doctors clamp and cut the cord shortly after birth, leaving behind a small stump attached to the baby's abdomen. Over the next few days, that stump dries up, shrivels, and eventually falls off. What remains is a small scar, the belly button. So in the simplest terms, your belly button is a reminder of where your umbilical cord used to be. It's not something your body designed for a purpose after birth. It's more like a leftover mark from one of the most important stages of your early development. If you've ever noticed, not all belly buttons look the same. Some are Innies, forming a small inward dip, while others are Outies, sticking outward slightly. This difference often leads people to think it has something to do with how the cord was cut, but that's actually a common myth. The shape of your belly button mostly depends on how your skin and underlying tissue heal after the umbilical stump falls off. Factors like the way scar tissue forms, the thickness of surrounding fat, and how the abdominal wall develops all play a role. An innie forms when the scar tissue pulls inward as it heals, while an outie can happen if there's a bit of extra tissue pushing outward, or in some cases, due to a small umbilical hernia during infancy. Both are completely normal, and neither one is more correct than the other. Do belly buttons have any function after birth? Here's the honest answer, not really, at least not in the way they did before birth. Once the umbilical cord is gone, the belly button doesn't serve a major biological function. However, that doesn't mean it's completely irrelevant. The belly button sits at the center of your abdomen and marks a point where several layers of tissue once connected. Beneath it are remnants of blood vessels that used to carry nutrients during fetal development. These structures are no longer active, but they're still part of your internal anatomy. In some medical contexts, the belly button can also act as a reference point. Surgeons sometimes use it as an entry site for minimally invasive procedures because it provides a natural opening that can be used without leaving obvious scars. So while it's not working in the traditional sense, it still has practical uses in modern medicine. Another interesting detail about the belly button is that it represents a naturally weaker area in the abdominal wall. Since it was once an opening for the umbilical cord, the muscle and tissue there are slightly less reinforced compared to the surrounding areas. This is why conditions like umbilical hernias can occur, especially in infants. In these cases, a small part of the intestine or tissue pushes through the abdominal wall near the belly button, creating a noticeable bulge. Most of the time, especially in babies, this resolves on its own as the muscles strengthen. In adults, however, hernias near the belly button can sometimes require medical attention. So while the belly button itself isn't doing much, the area around it still matters when it comes to overall health. You might have noticed that your belly button feels unusually sensitive. For some people, touching it can feel uncomfortable, ticklish, or even slightly painful. That's not your imagination. The belly button is connected to a network of nerves that run through the abdomen. Some of these nerves are linked to deeper internal structures, which is why certain sensations can feel strange or unexpected. For example, some people report a weird tingling feeling when they press on their belly button, almost like it's connected to somewhere else inside the body. This sensitivity is another leftover feature from its role during early development. While it's no longer serving its original purpose, the connections it once had can still influence how it feels. Beyond biology, belly buttons have also taken on cultural and social significance over time. In some cultures, they're seen as symbols of life and connection, representing the bond between mother and child. In others, they've become a focal point in fashion, especially with clothing styles that reveal the midsection. From a simple scar, the belly button has evolved into something that carries meaning beyond its physical presence. It's a subtle reminder that every person shares the same starting point, a connection to another human being that made life possible. So, what are belly buttons for? In the present moment, not much. They don't help you move, think, or survive in your day-to-day life, but their true purpose was already fulfilled long before you were aware of it. They are the lasting evidence of your earliest lifeline, a scar that marks where life quite literally flowed into you. And even though that connection is gone, the mark remains, a quiet reminder of how every human life begins. Sometimes the simplest things carry the deepest stories, and in the case of the belly button, what looks like a small, insignificant detail turns out to be one of the most meaningful marks on the human body. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.